advances to that point. So, for example, we're inevitably going to end up mining resources just because we have the technology to do so. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that we should just wait for the technology to happen and then follow it up with regulation. Having said that, I appreciate that to some degree we're in a legal era now where we do need to wait for things to develop organically before we have a sense of where we need to go with the regulation in the front. So it's very much a feedback loop between what people are doing and what they're able to achieve, and then how we decide we want to regulate that. And I think that you need to get that balance right.
When we return, we speak with Dr. Guillermo Lemarchand, a member of the METI International Advisory Committee, who can provide some history on this topic. Stay close.
Well, my name is Guillermo Lemarchand. I am from Argentina, and I have the privilege of starting very young with a program called SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, in the Southern Hemisphere. I was the first person who conducted a full sky survey of the Southern Hemisphere.
You were going to talk about how or why we would listen to space and why we would look.
Okay. Well, the first question is, are we alone? Let me see. In the past, even the scientists were very skeptic about the possibility of life elsewhere. They considered that the origin of life on Earth was so complicated that probably life is so rare that we are unique. And intelligent life would be much more rare. There were no evidences that around other stars there were planets. But there were a group of astronomers and biologists that in the mid-60s, and they made some sort of basic analysis. Say, well, only in our galaxy we have around 400,000 stars, and the universe has around billions of galaxies similar to our galaxies. Most of their galaxies are older than our own galaxy and our own star, that is the Sun, having the same type of physical elements. So many places, probably what has happened here on Earth might happen elsewhere. We call this the mediocrity principle. What happened on Earth might happen elsewhere. If we assume the mediocrity principle, some fraction of life elsewhere will develop intelligence. And at least some fraction of that intelligence will at some point start exploring the laws of nature. We share the laws of nature. What happened here, the laws of gravitation, the quantum physics, etc., what is happening here, we are sure is happening elsewhere in the universe. By assuming that, we can speculate about how to contact with other civilization that is light years away from Earth. Knowing the laws that governs the nature, we realize that 90% of the information comes from some sort of light. So all the electromagnetic waves travels at the speed of light. That gives us the opportunity to use that as a channel of communication. If you are trying to understand the type of universe you are living in, you need to understand the laws that governs the electromagnetic waves. And to learn about the universe, you have to build telescopes, or you have to build radio telescopes, and so on and so forth. So the second step is, if others like us are studying, like us, the universe, we can use that common knowledge to make contact with them. But if we want to make contact with them, we need to make things easier. Where do you put the signal in order to be easy to be detected? In that place, that relation between the background noise and the signal that you are injecting to that background noise could be easily detected. And that is the microwave window of the electromagnetic spectrum. The second problem is the microwave spectrum is too big, and that is where the technology appears. When the first SETI search was conducted in 1960, Frank Drake was using only one channel, and they were exploring the signals around two nearby stars. 25 years later, when I started with our program in Argentina, we were using 8 million different channels.
Wow.
With a very, very narrow band signals, and we were able to explore the whole southern hemisphere.
Wow.
And today, you can explore the whole microwave window. The limitation that we have is the size of the radio telescopes, because the hypothetical distances to the nearby civilization is too big. So there is some sort of decreasing in the intensity of the signals with the square of the distance. So you have to have big radio telescopes in order to detect the weakest signals. However, last year the Chinese dedicated a 600 meters radio telescope, the biggest in the world, that can detect a signal from the center of the galaxy, of the Milky Way galaxy, without any problem. A signal an intelligent signal.
So what if we're detecting leakage? What if we are not detecting a purposeful message?
Well, that I have been working on that. My hypothesis was the most probable thing is we will be first detecting the results of any kind of technological activity. A radar used by a neighbor civilization in order to detect the collision trajectory of a comet or an asteroid to their home planet might be detectable for us. If they are using some nuclear devices to make a mineral exploitation of one of their moons, probably we will be able to detect some of those things. Or if they are annihilating matter with antimatter in order to generate a propulsion system. Over the last 50 years, there have been dozens of proposals of things that might be detectable for a neighbor civilization. We don't have really the sensitivity today in order to detect TV signals generated in nearby stars, because they are so weak, they might be so weak. Eventually we can detect signals equivalent to our military radars. The main problem of the leakage signals are that the discussion that will generate about the hypothetical origin will be huge. Because imagine an extraterrestrial military radar signal that are there for 5 or 6 minutes, aiming in that direction, and we are just in the middle of that. We pick up that signal, and then probably we have to wait years to be repeated. It will be very difficult to prove their extraterrestrial origin. The curious thing is that if you understand the long-term evolution of arts and science on Earth, the breakthrough in us appears at the same time of big breakthroughs in science.
What are you thinking of here when that happened?
Here, for example, the Pericles century in ancient Greece, the Renaissance, the beginning of the 20th century when the invention of the quantum mechanics, and Picasso and other people thinking in changing the ways of perceiving things. What I'm saying is, if you share art, people trying to interpret that extraterrestrial art may be opening their mind to new ways of thinking.
Yes.
New ways of organizing things, changing in what Thomas Kuhn called paradigms.
So how would we translate broadcasts if we found them?
First, we need to find some sort of beacon. then we need to prove that that beacon has an extraterrestrial origin. Take weeks or months of doing so. Then we need to analyze carefully if there is some sort of content in that beacon. But the interpretation of that content might be completely different. And it will probably demand years or more in order to translate into a language that most of the people can understand.
Yeah.
Because here we are thinking in different paradigms of perceiving nature.
Yeah.
I call cognitive universals. Other civilizations that have been evolving in a different environment to ours might be organizing their environment in a different way, in ways that we never imagined. It might be difficult to completely understand all the concepts. We are assuming that they will help us and they will try to make things as simple, try to avoid any particular interpretation of data. Otherwise, it will never be understood. We think in binary because it is the most simple thing, at least for us. It is only two things, 0 or 1, or tone or nothing, silence, and it is much simpler. But that is the way of transmitting signals, nothing else. The semantics could be totally ununderstandable for us, unless we discover intelligent life in the nearby star, which is 4 light years far away. It will be practically impossible that the same generation will be able to receive the reply to our question today. And that is something that you have to take into account. The interstellar dialogue is a very difficult thing. That one of the speculation was that because of that, the transmitting civilization will put everything in only one message. That is a very strong speculation, no? Because they are assuming that it is in a stage that they can first understand what they are transmitting, and second, they don't have they are so stable that the new knowledge that they are receiving will not make them any damage. So it's another dimension that we have to take into account. So this is one of the most complex topics to be studied. And let me say that in my personal, by trying to think in these things, we learn more about us.
So how would we select a team of people to go on a mission light years away in this crazy world where it's even possible?
How many people would you like to send? Because the idea is, who can speak in name of us? That is the question behind that.
Yeah.
Who is representing the Earth? Who is representing the diversity of the Earth? Who can represent that? Because we have a planet with a great diversity. And who can represent the collective view of the whole species? I remember a quotation by Gandhi that says that all the religions in the world are different flowers in the same garden. You have to take into account that because the reply will strongly depend about the concept of religion. One thing is religion, and another thing is the church and the people, the interpretation of the knowledge of people who founded the different religions. And you have diverse type of religion. One thing is Buddhism, the other Christianism, but the only thing that they all have in common, they all believe in some sort of God existence. And most of them believe that the principle of fraternal love is the most important thing that governs. So all the other things are different. What happens if we detect a message from the start? Will strongly depend on the type of religion. I had this conversation with a priest. I organized a panel at the university, and I invited this priest who was an expert in religions, in all religions, not only the Catholic ones, but in all religions.
Yeah.
And he surprised the auditorium because he said, nothing will happen because we show that we do not occupy any important place in the universe because God created everything, the other creatures are also part of God. They don't see as a problem. Put the other